And don't, like, talk close.
Just before you start, the camera went off. Not that one. Yeah. Yeah.
They were going back to the new one. And now they find that number back. That's all we do.
Testing, testing. I think it doesn't, this is just for MP3, I guess we have.
Next on my list is a new mic for next time.
When the mic cuts out, I'll yell. So, all right. My name is Diane Doucette, and what I try to do in our present day situation is to get people to see themselves and each other and their world differently. I think that's like one of the most important things we can do is change the way we look at each other. These words are meant to be dark and real, but they are not meant to bring despair. We cannot change what we don't acknowledge, and with awareness, we have it within each and every one of us to bring about the change that will set humanity free from the cage that has been built in the name of saving us. Over the last year, we've witnessed many sad things in our beautiful land. We as a people have relinquished our free will, our relationships, our words, our very thoughts, and handed them over to the dictatorial figureheads that have hijacked our world. Their words became our words. Their public opinions, our public opinions. It was, however, a veneer of lies. It is becoming increasingly clear that for many people, what they are allowed to publicly admit and what they really feel inside are vastly different things, with a gap that is widening by the day. It was easy to cheer on the measures in the beginning. It's a normal defense mechanism when one wants to be protected from a perceived threat. But as time wore on, we noticed that the things being done in the name of saving us were creating immense collateral damage. We've been conditioned to prioritize COVID cases and deaths over everything else. We've been conditioned to ignore those who suffer as a direct result of the rules. We've been conditioned to vilify, blame, and hate anyone speaking up for the forgotten and disposable people. The people who rarely get acknowledged in media. The human beings whose deaths don't serve the justification of the rules. The ignored who don't get public messages of condolences from our handlers. Government puppets pretend to care about people when it suits their aims. They exploit the people who serve their ambitions while treating the rest as disposable. Those in power are in full awareness of what they are causing at the behest of the pharmaceutical technocracy. A rise in poverty and government dependency, the exacerbation of mental health crisis, hunger, addiction, domestic violence. Suicide, the loss of freedom, the loss of normal human interaction, the fracturing of our social stability, the destruction of friendships, families, the division fueled by government and media, the robbing of our children's childhoods, the death of our elders due to isolation, the destruction of businesses, livelihoods, and the economy, the erosion of the stability of the supply chain, the creation of segregation and indifference and intolerance, the oblivion of dignity, joy, community spirit, the killing of the human heart. Instead of destroying our country, why didn't they invest in strengthening the healthcare system and protecting the private sector that keeps it alive? Why? Because it was never meant to be about health. It was about destroying our way of life to create a new one. We've witnessed government impose conflicting measures that change faster than the rising tides. With the never-ceasing back and forth of changing rules, one trend remains constant. The noose keeps getting tighter. We cannot cooperate ourselves into freedom under those conditions. Since before COVID, the board was set to bring forth pharmaceutical and technological slavery. Over the last year, the chess pieces have been moving with increasing speed in that direction. We have been the target of a psychological war. It resulted in the public looking the other way and actively mistreating their neighbors. A side note on masks. Masking not only gives a sense of anonymity to those who would mistreat their fellow human beings, it also robs some people from recognizing their loved ones. It takes away our spark of human connection, the lifeblood of emotional wellness. In October of 2020, our chief medical officer publicly stated that some people were medically exempt from wearing masks. They were supposed to be honored without question. Since then, the medically exempt have been completely abandoned by the system. Discrimination, segregation, unconstitutional fines, arrests, and detention have been the experience of the medically exempt who have been since confined to social banishment. Government and media, using unjustified blaming and guilt tactics, have purposely misled the public on the medically exempt. Labeling anyone who disagrees with government as anti-maskers and falsely holding them responsible for the abuses inflicted on us all. A silent and complying public has enabled the ostracism of an entire demographic of people. It was the perfect psychological training tool to groom the public to accept pharmaceutical slavery.
Say no!
Once we accept the dehumanization and segregation of one, we accept the same for all others. Increasingly, people are seeing the writing on the wall. They realize that the more we cooperate, the more we get squeezed. Government has taken society hostage, and we might only be offered fake freedom if we relinquish our bodies and those of all following generations to be owned by a system who would treat human beings as its own personal laboratory mice. If we don't stand up for those who are already being treated as second-class citizens, then everyone else is next. If we accept segregation and vaccination ID in order to access the necessities of life, we sentence humanity as the potential sacrificial lambs of an unaccountable, liability-free industry. Scientific error or malevolence then become real threats to humanity's survival. We don't have to be anti-vax to embrace the ability to decide what happens to our bodies. Coercion is force. The system never lets the issue become front and center. It prefers to keep us boxed in the manageable gridlock that is the false pro-vax versus anti-vax paradigm. It desperately wants us to ignore the bigger picture, the enslavement of an entire race of beings, humanity. Government and corporations would never be able to get away with what they want to do without first breaking our spirit and free will with gradual dehumanizing measures.
Hear, hear!
In order to understand the gravity of the situation humanity finds itself in, we must acknowledge the concept of pharmaceutical and corporate slavery and bring it front and center. One doesn't have to fall within the manufactured box of anti-vaxxer to recognize the short-term and long-term threats this type of capture poses on us as a species. In order to understand the basics of pharmaceutical slavery, these definitions need to be understood. Person, human, individual, or a corporation. Slavery, submission to a dominating influence. The state of a person who is a chattel of another. Chattel, property. One doesn't have to be conspiracy-minded to see pharmaceutical slavery at our doorstep. It threatens every human being on this planet. I will say it again so that everyone may understand this clearly.
For those in the back!
Once human beings are segregated and coerced into being unwilling experimental pharmaceutical and technological test subjects, it puts the entire species at risk of scientific error. The dehumanization of human beings in the name of control, public health, and profit is unacceptable. It is a crime against humanity, and we will, as a people, draw our line in the sand. They close our businesses, and we fall back. They separate families, and we fall back. They destroy relationships, and we fall back. They rob us of our faces by masking us and our children, and we fall back. They kill our elders with loneliness, and we fall back. But no more. When this vaccination prison is positioned on us all, we will say no. Choice must be preserved. As free human beings, we will do what's right instead of what is demanded. We know what's on the line. To the system, our children and all following generations do not belong to you. The system tries to make it impossible to speak out and denounce our abusers. This is not reminiscent of a system looking out for the well-being of the people. It is indicative of an abusive system intimidating its victims into silence. We teach our children to speak up when they are bullied or abused, yet we have failed to do it ourselves. In the name of keeping their livelihoods, people have kept quiet and participated in things that conflict with their morals. This is proving more difficult to do as we are now facing the consequences of our acquiescence. The good news is the public is starting to not buy into the bullying attempts where people have to publicly apologize in media for saying inconvenient truths. There comes a time when a people can no longer stand by in silence. We've had enough of government pinning people against each other for its benefit. It's not fair to judge people because government told you to. The people who are standing for a better tomorrow are not the narrow anti-mask caricature media paints them as. They are the children advocating for the return of their lives. They are the families standing for their elders dying in isolation. They are the parents whose children suffer and die under the measures. They are the families of rotational workers who have been ripped apart by crushing isolation rules. They are the business owners who are sinking under unsustainable measures. They are the religious congregations who face persecution for exercising their faiths. They are the medically mask exempt who have been mistreated and discarded from society. They are the professionals who feel intimidated into silence while having to compromise their morals each day. They are the misrepresented, chastised and mocked. They are the hungry and cold. They are you. They are me. They are your human family. Let this be a peaceful but firm reminder to all who would silence us. We will be free. Those who are willing to share this message with their neighbors, you have my gratitude. I will hopefully be posting it to Facebook later. You can find me under Diane Doucette. By understanding our collective situation, seeing through the manufactured psychological manipulation, we can break the dark trance that has ensnared our collective consciousness. Together, by normalizing the conversation, by doing what is right instead of what is demanded, by being good to each other, refusing to mistreat our neighbors at the whim of undeserving tyrants, we can save our world for the future generations. The stakes are that high, but we can succeed. We have what the system does not and can never have, even with all its resources. We have the most powerful tool in existence. We have hearts, and we will use them. System, you have been warned. Humanity wins. We will be free.